I first noticed him because he wouldn't stop looking at me, and not in that casual, people watching way you get at the gym. No, this was different. Focused. Intentional. Almost like he was trying to figure me out. And the weirdest part? I had no idea why. It was a normal Tuesday evening. I dragged myself to the gym after a long day, already half regretting it. The place was busy, the usual after-work crowd, guys lifting heavy, girls filming workouts, that constant mix of music and metal clanking in the background. I kept my head down, earbuds in, sticking to my routine. That's when I saw him. Santi. I didn't know his name yet, obviously. At that point, he was just that guy. Tall, athletic, dark hair slightly messy like he didn't care, but somehow it still worked. He was across the room near the free weights, mid-set, but his attention wasn't on the dumbbells in his hands. It was on me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. You know how it is, you catch someone looking, your brain fills in the blanks, and suddenly it feels like a whole thing when it's probably nothing. So I ignored it. Focused on my own set, counted my reps, tried to shake the feeling. But then I looked up again. Still staring. Not even subtle about it. I frowned slightly, glancing behind me like maybe there was someone else he was actually watching. There wasn't. Just me, awkwardly standing there holding a pair of dumbbells, now completely aware of my own body in a way I hadn't been seconds before. I looked away quickly, heart doing this weird little skip. Okay, maybe coincidence. Except it kept happening. Every time I moved to a different machine, every time I paused between sets, there he was. Not constantly, not in a creepy, unbroken stare, but enough that I started noticing a pattern. Quick glances. Lingering ones. That split second too long before he looked away when I caught him. It was confusing. Because guys at the gym look at each other all the time. It's normal. Checking form, comparing lifts, whatever. But this didn't feel like that. There was something else behind it, something I couldn't quite place. And honestly, it was starting to get in my head. I became hyper-aware of everything. The way I stood. The way I lifted. Whether my shirt was sitting right or clinging too much. It was stupid, but I couldn't help it. His attention, whatever it meant, made me feel exposed. Get a grip, not 10. I muttered under my breath, adjusting the weights. I forced myself to focus. One more set. In, out, controlled. Don't think about it. But then, right as I finished and sat up, catching my breath, I looked up again. And this time, he didn't look away. Our eyes met properly for the first time. It was only a second. Maybe less. But it felt longer. His expression didn't change much, still calm, almost neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Something intentional. Like he'd been waiting for that exact moment. Then, finally, he glanced away, grabbing his water bottle like nothing had happened. I just sat there, blinking. What the hell was that? The rest of my workout was a mess. I tried to stick to my routine, but my focus was gone. My mind kept circling back to him, replaying those looks, trying to make sense of it. Was he judging me? Did I do something wrong? Or was it something else? That last thought hit me out of nowhere, and I immediately pushed it down. No. Don't go there. I grabbed my towel, wiping the back of my neck, stealing one last glance across the room. He was still there. And yeah, he was still looking. This time, though, when our eyes met, something shifted. Just slightly. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close enough to feel intentional. Then he turned and walked off like it meant nothing. I stood there, completely thrown. Because now I was sure of one thing. That wasn't an accident. And whatever it wasn't over. I told myself I wouldn't think about him again. That lasted maybe 12 hours. The next day, I caught myself checking the time all afternoon, like my body had already decided something before my brain caught up. By the time evening rolled around, I was already pulling on my gym clothes, trying to act like it was just part of my normal routine. It wasn't. I got there a little earlier than usual. Not on purpose. At least, that's what I told myself. The gym was quieter this time, that calm window before the evening rush. I scanned the room the second I walked in, and immediately felt stupid for doing it. He wasn't there. Of course he's not, I muttered, shaking my head as I headed to the lockers. Why would he be? It's a public gym, not some scheduled meetup. People come and go. There was no reason to expect him to show up again at the exact same time. Still, I couldn't ignore the small drop in my chest. I tried to move on. Started my warm-up, stretched, put my headphones in. Focused. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. And just when I was finally starting to forget about it, I felt it again. That same awareness. You know that feeling when someone's looking at you, and you just know? I turned before I could even think about it. And there he was. Santi. Standing near the entrance, scanning the room, until his eyes landed on me. And stopped. It wasn't subtle. Not even a little. This time, I didn't look away right away. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity finally outweighed the confusion. Maybe I was just tired of pretending I didn't notice. We held eye contact for a second. 2. Then he did something new. He nodded. Just a small one. Casual. Like we knew each other. I blinked, caught off guard, but instinctively nodded back. And just like that, something shifted. It was tiny. Barely noticeable to anyone else. But to me, it felt like crossing some invisible line. Before, it had just been looks. Unspoken. Easy to ignore. Now it was acknowledgement. I exhaled slowly, turning back to my workout, but my focus was already gone again. Because now the question wasn't just why is he looking at me? Now it was, why does it feel like he's trying to say something without actually saying it? The rest of the session turned into this quiet, unspoken game. I'd move to a machine, he'd somehow end up in the same general area a few minutes later. I'd catch him looking, he wouldn't always look away anymore. Sometimes he'd hold it for a second, like he was waiting. Waiting for what? At one point, I was at the cable machine, adjusting the weight, when I felt someone step up beside me. Close. Too close to be random. My chest tightened slightly as I glanced to the side. Him. Up close, he looked even better, which was honestly annoying. There was this calm confidence about him, like he didn't second-guess himself the way I clearly was right now. You using this? He asked. His voice was low, steady. Casual. Completely normal. Which somehow made everything feel even less normal. No, go ahead, I said quickly, stepping back a little. He nodded. Thanks. That was it. That was the whole interaction. But it didn't feel like nothing. Because as he adjusted the weights, I noticed it again, that awareness, that subtle tension. Like he knew I was still there. Like he could feel me noticing him the same way I felt him noticing me. I turned away, forcing myself to walk off before I overthought it even more. This is ridiculous, I told myself. It's just a guy at the gym. But my body wasn't buying it. I could feel it, every time he was nearby, every time our paths crossed. This weird pull. Not even physical, exactly. Just attention. Focus. Like we were orbiting each other without meaning to. Or maybe he did mean to. That thought hit me harder than I expected. Because if he did, then this wasn't accidental. And if it wasn't accidental, then what the hell did he want? I grabbed my water bottle, taking a long sip, trying to steady my thoughts. That's when I saw him again. Already looking at me. But this time, there was something different in his expression. Less neutral. More certain. Like he'd made up his mind about something. And for some reason, that made my stomach tighten in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I should have just left it there. Finished my workout, gone home, pretended none of it meant anything. That would have been the normal thing to do. But instead, I stayed longer than usual. And I knew exactly why. It got to the point where I wasn't even pretending anymore. I was aware of him the entire time, where he was, what he was doing, whether he was looking. It was like my brain had locked onto him and refused to let go. And the worst part? He wasn't making it easy to ignore. At some point, I moved over to the mirrors to do shoulders. Nothing heavy, just something to finish off the session. I positioned myself, grabbed the dumbbells, and tried, really tried, to focus on my form. 1 rep. 2. 3. And then I saw him. Not across the gym this time. Right behind me. Close enough that I caught his reflection instantly. My hands faltered slightly, breaking my rhythm. He wasn't working out. He was just standing there for a second, like he'd paused on purpose. Watching. Our eyes met again through the mirror. And this time, neither of us looked away. My chest tightened. There was something different about this moment. It wasn't accidental anymore. It wasn't quick glances or maybe this, maybe that. This was direct. Intentional. And for some reason, that made it harder to breathe normally. I set the weights down a little too quickly, exhaling as I rolled my shoulders back, trying to act like I wasn't completely thrown off. He stepped closer. Not invading my space, but close enough that I could feel the shift in the air. That same quiet tension, only stronger now. "You always train this late?" he asked. Simple question. Normal tone. But coming from him, right now, it felt like something else entirely. I turned slightly, facing him more directly. "Yeah, usually," I said, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "You?" He shrugged lightly. "Depends." His eyes stayed on me. Not aggressive. Not awkward. Just steady. Like he wasn't unsure about any of this. Unlike me. There was a small pause. Not long, but long enough to feel. "I'm Santi," he added. Of course he was. The name fit him way too well for some reason. "Not 10," I replied. Something about saying my name out loud in that moment felt strangely personal. Like I was giving him more than just a word. He nodded once, like he was registering it properly. "Not 10," he repeated. And yeah, the way he said it? That didn't help. Not at all. I cleared my throat slightly, glancing away for a second before looking back. "So, do you always stare at people mid-workout, or is that just me?" The second the words left my mouth, I almost regretted it. Too direct. Too honest. But also, I needed to know. For a split second, his expression shifted. Not defensive. Not embarrassed. If anything, amused. A faint smirk pulled at the corner of his mouth. "Just you," he said. No hesitation. No awkwardness. Just straight-up truth. My stomach flipped. "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. There it was. The question that had been sitting in my head since day one. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at me, really looked this time. His eyes moved slightly, taking me in a way that made me suddenly very aware of my posture, my breathing, everything. Then he exhaled softly, like he was deciding how much to say. "Because you keep noticing," he said. I frowned slightly. "That's your reason?" "It's part of it." "That makes no sense." He huffed a quiet laugh, glancing down for a second before looking back at me. "It does if you think about it." I shook my head, half confused, half frustrated. "No, it really doesn't." Another small pause. "You didn't look away," he said. I blinked. "What?" "The first day," he continued calmer now. "Most people do. They notice someone looking, they avoid it, pretend it's nothing." His gaze held mine again. "You didn't." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because he wasn't wrong. "And that made you stare?" I asked, trying to keep it light, even though my chest was tightening again. "It made me curious." There it was again. That word. Curious. Something about it hit different coming from him. I crossed my arms slightly, more to ground myself than anything. "About what?" This time, he didn't answer immediately. Again. Like he was choosing his words carefully. But when he finally spoke, his voice dropped just slightly. About why you didn't look away. My heartbeat picked up. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a random gym interaction anymore. It felt like something building. Something neither of us was fully saying out loud. And the worst part? I didn't want it to stop. I should have laughed it off. That would have been the easy way out. Make a joke, brush it aside, go back to lifting like this wasn't turning into something else. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, looking at him, trying to figure out what exactly was happening between us. Okay, I said slowly, exhaling through my nose. So you were curious? Yeah. And staring was your solution? A small smirk pulled at his lips again. It worked, didn't it? I hate that he was right. Because now we were here. Standing way too close in the middle of a gym, having a conversation that felt way more personal than it should have been. I shook my head slightly, glancing off to the side before looking back at him. You know that's kinda weird, right? Yeah, he said easily. No denial. No defensiveness. Just acceptance. That threw me off more than anything else. You don't seem bothered by that, I pointed out. I'm not. Why? He shrugged again, but this time there was something more behind it. Because I got what I wanted. That made my chest tighten. And what's that? His eyes held mine. This. Silence. Not awkward. Not empty. Just heavy. Like the air between us had shifted into something neither of us could pretend was anymore. I swallowed, suddenly very aware of how close we were standing. Talking to me? I asked, even though I already knew that wasn't all he meant. Yeah, he said. A beat. And seeing if I was right. Right about what? That you were noticing me the same way I was noticing you. My heart skipped. There it was. No more vague answers. No more half explanations. Just honesty. And I didn't have a quick response for that. Because yeah, I had been noticing him. From the first look. From the second. From every moment after that where I told myself it didn't mean anything. I let out a quiet breath, running a hand over the back of my neck. You're really direct, you know that? I said. Only when it matters. And this matters? He didn't hesitate. Yeah. God. That shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. I looked down for a second, trying to gather my thoughts, then back up at him. And what if you're wrong? I asked. Then you'd have walked away already. Another hit. Clean. Simple. Accurate. I huffed out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. You've got an answer for everything. Not everything. What don't you have an answer for? This time, he took a second. Actually thought about it. Then his gaze softened, just slightly. What you're gonna do next? That caught me off guard. Because up until now, it felt like he was the one in control of this whole situation. Like he'd already figured it out while I was still catching up. But that put it back on me. And I wasn't ready for that. What do you mean? I asked. He shifted his weight slightly, but didn't step back. I mean, he said, voice steady, we can go back to pretending this is nothing. My chest tightened a little. Or we stop pretending. There it was again. That choice. Simple. Clear. And way heavier than it should have been for something happening in the middle of a gym. I glanced around for a second, suddenly aware of the normal world continuing around us. People lifting, talking, moving like nothing was happening. Meanwhile, I felt like I was standing right on the edge of something. And what does stop pretending look like? I asked quietly. His eyes didn't leave mine. It looks like you not acting like you don't feel it. My pulse kicked up. And what if I don't? I challenged, even though my voice lacked conviction. He stepped just a fraction closer. Not enough to draw attention. But enough that I felt it. You do, he said softly. And the way he said it. It wasn't cocky. It wasn't pushy. It was certain. Like he wasn't guessing anymore. Like he knew. I held his gaze, trying to push back. Trying to find some kind of defense, but nothing came out. Because the truth was, I did feel it. That pull. That tension. That awareness that had been building since the first time I caught him looking at me. And now it was right here. Between us. Real. Unavoidable. I exhaled slowly. This is crazy, I muttered. Is it? He asked. Yes, I said, but it came out weaker than I intended. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Then why haven't you walked away? I didn't answer. Because we both already knew why. Another quiet moment passed. Then he stepped back, just enough to break the intensity without actually ending it. I'm over there, he said, nodding toward the free weights area. I frowned slightly. Okay. You can come back to your workout, he continued casually. Pretend this never happened. A small pause. Or you can come find me when you're done. And just like that, he turned and walked away. No pressure. No chasing. Just leaving the choice with me. I stood there, completely still, staring after him. My heart was still racing. My thoughts all over the place. Because now it wasn't about what he wanted. Now it was about what I was going to do about it. I didn't move for a solid 10 seconds after he walked away. Which, in a gym, is longer than you think. People brushed past me, weights clanked somewhere behind, music kept going, but I just stood there, staring at the spot where Santi had been like my brain needed a second to catch up with what just happened. What the hell was that? I muttered under my breath. Because now everything felt different. Before it was looks. Glances. That weird tension I could ignore if I really tried. Now it had a direction. And worse, it had a choice. I dragged a hand over my face, exhaling slowly, forcing myself to move. I grabbed the dumbbells again, resetting my stance in front of the mirror. Just finish your workout, I told myself. That's it. Don't overthink it. Simple plan. Didn't work. I got through maybe half a set before my focus snapped again. Because I could feel him. Not even looking, just knowing he was somewhere behind me now, in that same space he pointed to. Like my awareness of him had flipped into something automatic. I set the weights down again, more frustrated this time. This is stupid. It's just a guy. But my body wasn't treating it like just a guy. It was reacting like something mattered here. And that annoyed me more than anything. I grabbed my water bottle, taking a long sip, trying to ground myself. Then, against my better judgment, I glanced over. He was exactly where he said he'd be. Free weights. Back turned slightly, mid-set, completely focused. And for the first time since I noticed him, he wasn't looking at me. That hit different. I don't know why, but it did. Because suddenly, all that attention he'd been giving me? Gone. Like he'd handed it over, and now it was my move. Seriously? I muttered. I looked away quickly, shaking my head. No. No way I'm doing this. I turned back to my workout, forcing myself through another set. Then another. One more. Just finish and leave. That was the plan. But halfway through my last exercise, my mind wasn't even on what I was doing anymore. It kept circling back to what he said. Or you can come find me when you're done. Simple. Casual. But it was sitting in my chest like a weight. Because if I walked out right now, that was it. End of story. We'd go back to being strangers who happened to notice each other once. But if I didn't, if I actually went over there. My grip tightened slightly on the handle. Why does this feel like a bigger decision than it should be? I muttered. Because it wasn't just about walking across a gym. It was about admitting something. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I finished the set, a little sloppier than usual, then stood there for a second, catching my breath. Thinking. Overthinking. Then finally, Forget it. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. And once they were out, my body moved before my brain could argue. I grabbed my towel, wiped my hands quickly, and turned. Each step toward him felt louder than it should have. Not physically. Just in my head. Like I was hyper-aware of everything now, how I walked, where I looked, whether he'd noticed before I even got there. He didn't. Not at first. He finished his set, racked the weights, rolled his shoulders slightly. Then turned. And saw me. That was the moment. Because the second his eyes met mine, something shifted again. Not surprise. Not confusion. Just recognition. Like he'd been expecting this. A slow, subtle smile pulled at his lips, not cocky, not over the top. Just enough. You came, he said. And yeah, hearing that out loud did something to me. I exhaled, stopping a step away from him, crossing my arms slightly like I needed something to do with my hands. Don't make it a big deal, I said, even though it already felt like one. He huffed a quiet laugh. I'm not. You kinda are. Am I? He asked, tilting his head slightly. I held his gaze for a second, then shook my head. Whatever. A brief silence settled between us, but it wasn't awkward. It felt charged. Different from before. Less uncertain. More real. So, he said after a moment, resting his hand casually on the rack beside him. What made you decide? I shrugged lightly, trying to play it off. Curiosity, I guess. His eyes flickered slightly at that. Same as me, huh? I didn't answer right away. Because it wasn't exactly the same. But I wasn't about to admit that. Something like that, I said instead. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than I was saying. And again, that certainty in him showed up. Not overwhelming. Just steady. So what now? I asked, raising an eyebrow slightly. Now? He repeated. Yeah. You got me over here. What was the plan? That earned a small smile. I didn't have one. I blinked. Seriously? Yeah, he said simply. Didn't think I'd need one. That's not reassuring. It's honest. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head slightly. You're weird, you know that? I've been told. You still haven't walked away. There it was again. That quiet push. Not aggressive. But definitely intentional. I met his gaze, holding it this time. Neither have you, I pointed out. His smile shifted slightly at that. Yeah, he said. Another beat of silence. And then, more quietly, I don't want to. That landed harder than anything else he'd said so far. Because it wasn't teasing. It wasn't playful. It was just real. And I felt it. That same pull tightening in my chest again. Stronger now. Clearer. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I stopped trying to fight it. We ended up staying there longer than either of us probably planned. At first, it still looked normal from the outside. Two guys at the gym, talking between sets. Nothing unusual. But it didn't feel normal. Not to me, at least. Because now there was no pretending. Every word, every pause, every glance, it all carried that same underlying tension that had been building since day one. So how long have you been coming here? Santi asked, leaning casually against the rack. Couple months, I said. You? Longer. Figures. He smirked slightly. Why? You act like you own the place. I don't, he said calmly. I just don't hesitate. That tracked. I huffed quietly, glancing down for a second before looking back at him. Yeah, I noticed. A small pause. Then his eyes flicked over me again, not in a rushed way, not even in a hidden way. Just open. And somehow that made it hit harder. You always discard it? He asked. I frowned slightly. What? You think before you say everything. That's called being normal. Or careful. I crossed my arms slightly. And what's wrong with that? Nothing, he said. Just means you don't do things unless you're sure. I held his gaze. And you do? Yeah. No hesitation. Again. I shook my head slightly, a quiet laugh escaping me. Must be nice. It is. God. There was something about the way he said things, simple, direct, that made it hard to push back. Like he wasn't trying to convince me of anything. He just was. We fell into a rhythm after that. Talking between sets, moving around the same space without really separating. It wasn't planned, but it also didn't feel accidental anymore. At some point, I realized I'd completely forgotten about my workout. Which, honestly, said enough. I was leaning against one of the benches, catching my breath more from the conversation than the exercise, when he stepped a little closer again. Not sudden. Not forced. Just natural. You still think this is crazy? He asked. I let out a slow breath, glancing off to the side for a second. Yeah, I admitted. He nodded slightly. Fair. But, I hesitated. He waited. Didn't interrupt. Didn't fill the silence. Just let me get there on my own. But I don't think I'd be standing here if I didn't want to. I finished. That felt bigger than I expected. Saying it out loud made it real in a way nothing else had yet. His expression shifted slightly, not surprise, not even satisfaction. Just something softer. Yeah, he said quietly. I know. That shouldn't have made my chest tighten like it did. You always this sure about people? I asked. Not people. Then what? He looked at me for a second longer than usual. About this. There it was again. Not vague. Not hidden. Just clear. And I didn't look away this time. Didn't try to brush it off. I just stood there, holding his gaze, feeling that same pull settle deeper into my chest. You're really not gonna make this easy for me, are you? I said quietly. He tilted his head slightly. Easy how? Like I can just walk away and forget about it. You can't, he said. I frowned. That's not what it feels like. I know. A beat. Then why say that? Because I don't want you here unless you actually want to be. That stopped me. Completely. Because that was the first time it felt like he wasn't just pulling me in. He was giving me space to leave. And weirdly, that made me stay more. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. You're confusing, I said. I'm not, he replied. You're just not used to it. To what? To not second-guessing something you feel. That hit deeper than I expected. Because yeah, that was exactly what I'd been doing this entire time. Overthinking. Questioning. Trying to label something that didn't need one yet. And standing here now. I was tired of it. Maybe, I admitted quietly. A small silence settled between us again. But this time, it felt different. Less tense. More settled. Like we'd both crossed some point without even realizing it. Then he shifted slightly, glancing toward the exit. You done? He asked. I blinked. With the workout? Yeah. I let out a short laugh. I think I stopped actually working out like 20 minutes ago. Same. That earned a real smile from me. And for a second, everything felt simple. Normal. Which was ironic, considering how not normal this whole thing had been. Then he looked back at me. And the simplicity disappeared again. Walk out with me, he said. Not a question. Not a command. Just an option. And somehow, that felt like an even bigger step than walking over to him earlier. Because this meant continuing it outside of the space where it started. Real world. No distractions. No excuses. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then exhaled. Yeah, I said. And just like that, I chose not to walk away. Walking out of the gym with him felt different. It's weird how a place can hold something in. Inside, everything had its own bubble, noise, movement, distractions. It gave us cover, in a way. Outside? It was quieter. Real. And suddenly, there was nothing buffering whatever this was between us. The night air hit my skin as we stepped out, cooler than I expected. I exhaled slowly, like I hadn't fully realized how tense I'd been until now. We walked side by side toward the parking lot. Not too close. But not distant either. That same awareness was still there, just sharper now. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. And surprisingly, it wasn't awkward. It felt like we both knew this part mattered. So, I said finally, breaking the silence. You do this a lot? He glanced at me. Do what? Lock onto someone at the gym until they come talk to you. A faint smile pulled at his mouth. No. Convenient answer. It's the truth. I studied him for a second, trying to read whether he was just saying what I wanted to hear. Didn't feel like it. So why me? I asked. There it was again. The question. But this time, it felt heavier. More real. Because now I actually cared about the answer. He didn't respond right away. Just kept walking, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes forward. You're hard to read, he said. I frowned slightly. That's your reason? It's part of it. I let out a quiet breath. You keep saying that. Because it's not just one thing. Then what else? He glanced at me again. And there it was, that same look. Focused. Intentional. You noticed me, he said. I already said that. Yeah, he replied. But you didn't pretend you didn't. I looked ahead, processing that. And that matters? I asked. Yeah. Why? He shrugged slightly. Most people hide behind something. You didn't. I let out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. You're giving me way too much credit. I don't think so. There was no push in his voice. No exaggeration. Just certainty. And again, I didn't know what to do with that. We reached the edge of the parking lot, slowing down a bit without really deciding to. So what now? I asked. It felt like the question had followed us out here. Inside the gym. Out here. Still unanswered. He stopped walking. So I did too. We were facing each other now, a couple feet apart, cars scattered around us, distant streetlights casting that soft glow over everything. It felt quiet. Like the world had pulled back just enough to leave space for this moment. That depends, he said. On what? On whether this was just a gym thing for you. My chest tightened slightly. Because that was exactly the line I'd been trying to figure out this whole time. And if it's not? I asked. His gaze held mine. Then we don't leave it here. Simple. Direct. And somehow heavier than anything else he'd said. I shifted my weight slightly, crossing my arms, not defensive, just grounding myself again. You're really good at making things sound simple, I said. They are simple. No, they're not. Then you're overthinking it. I huffed quietly. You keep saying that like it's easy to just stop. It is. I shook my head. Not for me. For a second, he didn't respond. Just looked at me. What are you actually unsure about? He asked. That question hit harder than expected. Because it wasn't surface level. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I opened my mouth to answer. And paused. Because I didn't have a clean response. I don't know, I admitted finally. That felt more honest than anything else I could have said. His expression softened slightly again. Yeah, he said quietly. You do. I let out a slow breath, looking off to the side for a second before back at him. This, I said. Whatever this is. He nodded once. And I don't usually just follow something like this without understanding it. And you need to understand it first? Yeah. He took a small step closer. Not too much. Just enough. You're not gonna understand it by standing still, he said. That landed. Because deep down, I already knew that. I exhaled slowly, meeting his eyes again. So what are you suggesting? Come get a drink with me. My heart kicked slightly at that. Not because it was a big ask, but because of what it meant. Continuing this. Letting it go somewhere. Outside of the gym. I studied him for a second, trying to find hesitation, doubt, anything. There wasn't any. Just that same steady certainty. And for once, I didn't want to overthink it. I let out a small breath. One drink, I said. A hint of a smile appeared on his face. Yeah, he replied. One drink. And somehow, I knew it wasn't just going to be that. We didn't go far. There was a small bar just a few minutes from the gym. Nothing fancy, just low lighting, quiet music, the kind of place where people went to unwind without thinking too much. Fitting, honestly. Because thinking too much was exactly what I'd been doing all night. Until now. We found a table in the corner, a little more private than the rest. I sat across from him at first, mostly out of habit, but even that felt temporary. Like distance wasn't really part of this anymore. What are you getting? He asked. Beer's fine, I said. Same. Simple. Easy. And yet my chest still felt tight in that way I couldn't fully explain. We ordered, and for the first time since this started, there was a real pause. No gym noise. No movement around us to distract from it. Just us. I leaned back slightly in my seat, exhaling. This feels different already, I said. It is, Santi replied. How? He looked at me for a second before answering. No distractions. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that was exactly it. No pretending this was any more. The drinks came, and I took a sip almost immediately, partly because I needed something to do with my hands. He noticed. Didn't say anything. Just watched me for a second in that same way he had at the gym, but now, it felt less confusing. More intentional. You're still thinking, he said. I huffed quietly. I always am. I know. That made me glance up at him. You don't even know me. I know enough. I raised an eyebrow. From staring at me across a gym? From how you reacted to it? That shut me up for a second. Because again, he wasn't wrong. I looked down at my drink, turning the glass slightly between my fingers. You read people like this all the time? I asked. Not like this. What's different? He didn't answer right away. And for once, it felt like he was the one choosing his words carefully. Usually I don't care enough to figure it out, he said. That landed harder than expected. I looked up at him again, holding his gaze. And you care now? I asked. Yeah. No hesitation. No softening. Just truth. I let out a slow breath, leaning back slightly. You're making this difficult, I admitted. How? Because you're not giving me anything to push against. That earned a small smile. I'm not trying to. I know, I said. That's the problem. A brief silence settled again, but this one felt calmer. Like the tension had shifted into something steadier. Less sharp. More real. I took another sip, then set the glass down. So what is this to you? I asked. He leaned forward slightly, forearms resting on the table. This? He repeated. Yeah. Something I want to keep going. My chest tightened again. Not in a bad way. Just real. And you're sure about that? I asked. He held my gaze. Yeah. And if I'm not? Then we take it at your pace. That was new. I blinked slightly. You'd do that? I'm not in a rush, he said. I just don't want to pretend it's nothing. That might have been the first time I felt my guard actually drop a little. Because up until now, everything about him had felt ahead of me. Like he already knew what this was while I was still figuring it out. But that met me where I was. I nodded slowly, looking down for a second before back at him. Okay, I said. His expression shifted slightly at that. Not surprise. Not victory. Just acknowledgement. Okay? He repeated. Yeah, I said. We don't pretend. A small, genuine smile appeared on his face this time. And yeah, that did something to me. We talked longer after that. About normal things. Work, routines, random stuff that grounded everything back into reality. But even then, that underlying connection didn't go away. It just settled. By the time we stepped outside again, the night had gotten quieter. Cooler. We stood there for a second, either of us rushing to leave. So, I said, shoving my hands lightly into my pockets. Guess this is where we decide if it was just one drink. He looked at me, that same steady gaze. You already know it's not. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, I admitted. I'll see you again? He asked. Not demanding. Not assuming. Just asking. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. He nodded once. Like that was enough. Then, after a second, I'm glad you didn't walk away, he added. I looked at him, something in my chest settling into place. Me too, I said. And that was it. No dramatic ending. No big moment. Just a quiet understanding between us. It started with a look I didn't understand. And somehow, I didn't need to understand it anymore.